Hello and welcome to another episode of TesterSpeak Season 2. And I'm your host, Brajesh Dev, and you're watching this on the Test Chat YouTube channel. Well, today is a very special day because for the first time, I have somebody from Australia on the show, and it is nobody other than our favorite tester, Sam Connelly, who is quite famous for her pair testing sessions and has created quite some buzz with all the things that she does. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome Sam Connelly. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, Brajesh. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for accepting the invite. I know you have a completely busy schedule, but you are giving us this time, and it is a great opportunity for us to, interact. And while you do these wonderful pair testing sessions with a lot of testers, I would want the rest of the world to know about more about your work and spread some more awareness about testing more than the ways that you do. So I am actually kind of overwhelmed to actually host you. And I must tell you this, that I've been following your work for quite some time, and I find it very interesting the way you do it. And so I'm curious about certain things. First of all, how did you get started with testing?
How did I get started in testing? Well, when I started studying at uni, so this was a little while ago, I was studying computer science with mechatronics engineering and a diploma in Japanese. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought research on robotics in Japan sounded pretty cool. And so I had actually been working in supermarkets since I was 14 and had part-time jobs all through high school and uni. And so as I was studying, I felt like I wanted to do some work that was a bit more related to my studies versus working in the supermarket. So I started applying for part-time web developer roles. And they're like, oh, we're actually looking for someone with a little bit more experience, but we'll keep you in mind for any software testing positions we have come up. And that sparked the interest in software testing. So I started applying for software testing roles because it seemed to be an easier foot in the door for landing that first job. And my first software testing job was testing point of sale software that they use in supermarkets. So I was able to combine 7 years of work experience working in supermarkets and software testing as a part-time job while I was going through uni. And I've generally stuck with it since then because I realized I enjoy trying to understand problems, trying to help people through some technology, also trying to make technology better for people as well. So I enjoy the people side of it. And that's how I started.
Well, awesome. I mean, to first of all, be working throughout your school and your university, and then getting a first job, which is a combination of your past experience plus something that you wanted to do. I think that's a great point to start. Now, so let me just go back a bit because you sparked an interest. How did you told me about the thought of studying robotics in Japan would be a good idea. So was that the reason why Japanese was one of the subjects in your university or something?
No, in the context of Australia, when I was in primary school, my age group was one of the first years to have almost compulsory Japanese across nearly all public schools. So I started studying Japanese when I was about 10. And it was basically everyone who I went to school with studied actually Japanese up until they're about 14 or 15. And I enjoyed the subject so much that I just kept going with it. I never actually finished the diploma in Japanese, and I never finished the mechatronics engineering because I developed my first bout of chronic depression going through uni, and it made the engineering stuff really hard. The computer science stuff was just so much easier compared to the engineering, and that's also a contributing factor to me picking a tech career over a mechatronics engineering career.
Well, thank you for sharing that bit. Now, so from the time you started with testing, okay, and if you just look back until today, I'm sure you would have seen testing evolve. I'm sure you would have seen testers evolve. So, what are some of your thoughts on the state of testing then versus the state of testing now, and the state of testers then versus the state of testers now?
Oh, so okay. How have I seen testing change over the 10 years I've been a tester? I think I've seen the industry grow into trying to be more flexible with the role. I think there's a strong focus these days on testers being able to bridge the gaps between other stakeholders on multiple different levels. So if you can help bridge the gap between testers and developers and help developers own their own quality or improve their testing harnesses, there's a lot of companies that are demanding those types of skills. I think the demand for the stereotypical manual tester, which I think is a terrible term. I don't think we ever should have called it manual testing to begin with. It's not seen as lucrative. It's not paid as well. And it's a really weird mindset to think that in-depth exploratory testing is not as valuable as pushing out code. And it's simply because I think testing is not as tangible as writing code. If I'm a software developer and I help you deliver an awesome product, I can point to something and I say, I helped you build that. As a tester, if I help my teams prevent risks and issues and I improve the process, I can't point to any one thing and say, I helped you build that. So I can say I helped made it better, but I don't know how much better I helped. I can't, it's a lot harder for me to justify my value in that whole process compared to a software developer.
Well, yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the tangibility aspect comes in, and you're not able to show how much of value that you've actually provided for the product. Now, there's another way that I look at it is, as a tester, you could probably say that, okay, you know what, I have helped you prevent a lot of the bugs that could actually be seen by the users, and that's how I've made it better. And if somebody says give examples, then you would have plenty of examples of bugs that you would have caught during your testing, and say, okay, you know what, the payment gateway interaction was stuck, and it was buggy, and you could lose data, and there could be security threats, and the performance was slow, and so on and so forth. So there are things that you could actually say, but I get your point. It is not as tangible as that of the work of developers, and that's probably why people in universities are more attracted towards software development careers rather than software testing careers. And
also, like, as I was going through my degree, I didn't learn anything about software testing. None of the tangible skills. There might have been maybe some critical thinking skills that I developed during my uni days, but I did not study a single subject on software testing. I think the closest I got was how to build some unit testing frameworks using Java and the Ant build tool at the time. But that's the closest I got to testing.
So let me ask you this, and I know that in most regions there is a very shallow approach towards teaching testing in the universities and colleges. So the formal education path that we choose, that we have a college degree and we become a graduate, a postgraduate, and so how is it in Australia that do people really talk about testing during school days or college days, or how is it? Is it integrated into the education system, or is it something that you acquire as a skill from outside?
In my education, it wasn't necessarily a topic covered at all. I do know some people that teach some software testing skills in universities in Sydney, but I grew up in a country town in Tasmania, and I just went to my local university because I didn't really want to move to Melbourne or Sydney, and I felt like a degree was a degree at the end of the day. It didn't really matter where you studied. And it turns out my degree wasn't necessarily essential for my chosen career path, though it is common to see in a lot of job ads a requirement for a software engineering or computer science degree, but I don't see it as being essentially needed. But I think it's the same for software developers as well. With the resources we have available on the internet, you can teach yourself how to code, how to build a website, and go through a short 12-week boot camp to get up to speed with tools that are used industry-wide at the moment. We don't necessarily have the same thing for software testing. So I think we tend to fall back on either a computer science degree as a requirement or relevant work experience. But I think for people going through the education system today, I think it's really hard to land that first job straight out of college.
Yeah.
Because I feel like every company wants to hire senior engineers today,
Yeah.
and not want to train up anyone who's just a fresh graduate straight from uni.
That's absolutely right. And it is pretty much the same case if you go in different parts of the world as well. In a lot of regions, if I just talk about India, for example, testing is not so much a part of the formal education system, and that creates a problem. It is there as an elective subject which people can choose during their computer science engineering or whatever that they are doing. But a lot of people think, oh, testing, it will not pay me as much as a development job, so let me not go for it. And again, the same thing that you spoke about a few minutes earlier, it is not as tangible as development. So what will I tell people? People in the society will question me, what are you doing? Or testing, what is that? So if you say I'm a software developer, then people can say, oh, what software have you developed? And people can show their work. But as a tester, you can't really show what you've done. You can't carry a screenshot of the bugs that you've prevented and show it to people. Generally, people will not go for it. So that is a mindset problem that I feel that people need to overcome. When I go and speak to university students and I ask them, okay, what is it that you want to do after this? And everybody by default will say development, unless somebody has gone and spoken about software testing. And nowadays, a lot of our friends, are going to universities and colleges and are trying to teach people about software testing, about what it is, and how it can also be a great career with with good examples of some of the people who have done some excellent work over the years. And hopefully we are able to change the mindset of the society in general. And you also mentioned in one of the responses about manual testing, and that's another problem. People, a lot of people think testing is just a click 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 kind of a job, and you don't have to do anything. And
Oh yeah,
think,
anyone off the street can do testing,
exactly,
right?
exactly. This is what we get to hear, and that's the mindset that we have to deal with. Now, um, with so much focus on the tools these days, um, how do you think that the testers need to adapt to these changing conditions? Also keeping in mind that, mm, that they should not lose track of the basic craft. So what are your thoughts on that?
Um, I think because we all work in the technology space, um, technology has a tendency to move a lot faster than uh, generally what our human brains can have capacity to deal with. If you think about someone who goes through medical school to become a doctor, it has been shown that their knowledge gets out of date over time.
Yes.
You're actually better to go to a graduate doctor because they have more relevant information than the 50-year-old doctor who's been practicing for 25 years.
Right.
But who would you trust more? The fresh graduate or the old established doctor? The doctor has to put in conscious effort to keep up to speed, put in professional hours, and generally keep their knowledge up to date. And in technology, we have the same issues, but sometimes even on a faster spectrum. I know people who've worked in technology for 20 years, and the systems that they were working on are no longer, well, companies aren't really hiring new graduates for old mainframe technology
Right.
anymore. So that constant change of keeping up to date with what's happening, I think, is a real challenge in the technology industry. But I also feel like as an individual, you can't know about everything. So picking a niche that that you enjoy learning about, I think, is a lot better than trying to be a jack of all trades. My
Right.
specialty is mobile testing because I come from a hardware background. I really like that, bridging that gap between software and hardware. And for me, that just feels more tangible than dealing with websites. So if someone is asking me about Selenium and web automation, I'm like, I am not your person. I am not interested in doing web automation. Now, I can do this stuff if you want me to, but I'm going to be slow and inefficient, and it's not where my interest or my expertise are. So being able to say, no, that's not my interest, or this is actually slightly different, I think is beneficial for knowing where your own skills are and being
Right.
able to draw that line. I feel like a lot of testers in the industry try to be a jack of all trades. And if you see all the technology that people tend to list on their resumes or in job ads, oh my God, job ads are terrible when it comes to listing out how much technology they want. And half the time it's just the recruiter has just put a big giant list of all the technology that the company uses. And they're like, yeah, we want someone who kind of knows about some of this stuff. And that's a unicorn tester. They don't exist. That's a full DevOps software delivery team that helps manage everything through that pipeline. And I think that can be really off-putting for a lot of people who are trying to get that first job in technology too.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, the job adverts these days, they ask for an entire department, in one person, and that's quite funny. And it's interesting how you gave the doctor's analogy. I have a similar analogy, but I do it with pilots. Modern day pilots, they train on modern equipment and modern simulators, and they know about the latest planes, but we still tend to rely on pilots with thousands of hours of flying experience. The same thing goes with doctors. You're absolutely right. I didn't think of that as an example, but that's a good example to have. Talking a little more on the job adverts, uh, that has a negative impact on testers looking for their initial job. But then, most of the job adverts contain these words Selenium and Java and things like that. So do you think people are still testing on the surface where there is a lot of focus on UI, whether it is web or mobile, rather than people, trying to get deeper into the technology stack
Mm.
and trying to explore that part of the application which will bring in uh, more value, if I were to say it that way?
Yes, I think there is still a strong focus on testing on the UI layer. There's a lot of tools and technology that people ask me about. They're like, oh, should I learn Appium for mobile testing? And my short answer is no. You should learn the tools and technology the developers on your team are using, because if your test code can live in the same repository as your production code, you increase collaboration. So if your developers are doing React Native, then roll up those learning sleeves. I know it can be a bit intimidating to learn a completely new language upfront, but learning how to do testing in the tools and technology that the developers are doing is going to make your life a little bit easier. If you pick Appium and Python because you like Python, you will be responsible for maintaining that test repository. And if it becomes flaky, and eventually it will, you're going to be the only person who can maintain that. But if you want to encourage quality as a team responsibility, using the tools and technology that can help increase collaboration is usually more beneficial in the long run. But it does mean, as a tester, you may have to jump in and learn a language that you are unfamiliar with. I've been learning some TypeScript, JavaScript lately, completely outside of my comfort zone, but it has enabled me to help test that deeper layer. So we're building a microservice backend for an e-commerce site. We're using Azure DevOps things. So we're using Event Hub as our queuing system, and we've got some REST APIs, basically to help tell if you've got stock available and how much the shipping is going to cost. So we've got a couple of microservices to do that. But building out this test framework in TypeScript means we've now got ways to plug in sending different events for testing purposes, and for injecting different stock at different layers, emulating ordering stock online. We're able to get more in-depth testing. And we've shown with this harness issues with performance and security and a lot of these deeper bugs that if you were just testing from the UI layer, if the website was a little bit slow, you don't know if it is because the underlying architecture is somehow flawed, or it's just your test environment doesn't quite have the resources as production. A lot of these types of issues that came up, that if we observed them just through testing the UI, we wouldn't be able to say if it was a problem with our technology or not, because it's too easy to say, well, the test environment, it's a little shit sometimes. Yeah, we know.
Well, no, that's again quite insightful, because I also firmly believe that you must speak in a language that the developers understand. It makes life easy for everybody. So if you are also learning the technology that the developers rely on, it helps you a great deal in testing. And some of these deeper bugs, you can find them sooner. It's about, when we talk about testing, it's about finding the risks early, and this gives you a great insight into the risks very early in the project, rather than waiting for discovering something in the UI and then trying to dig deeper. And that's consuming a lot of time.
Yeah, because one of our biggest risks with this product, the whole point of pulling out this microservice architecture from this monolithic backend, is we want to reduce overselling. Overselling costs this business 300,000 Australian dollars a week. well, it's not necessarily a cost, but it provides a really poor user experience. If we oversell that much stock a week and then we have to reimburse customers what they paid, it's a terrible experience. You're more likely to go, this is a crap business. They can't even manage the stock effectively.
Absolutely. So, as a tester, how important is it, Sam, that I pay attention to the architecture of my product? Number one. Number two, as a tester, how important is it for me to actually think about the business implications of whatever is going on in the product, in the project?
Sorry, I'm just taking notes of architecture and business context. So how important is it to be aware of the architecture? I wouldn't say it's the most important thing, but I guess knowing how to, if you're on a team and they're using a particular monolithic architecture backend, and you hear a lot of developers complaining about it being like spaghetti code, it's really hard to maintain, then as a tester, your spidey sense, your superpower should be tingling a little bit. Whenever you hear developers say, oh, the code is a mess, it's really hard to maintain, that's some secret words for there's probably hidden bugs here.
Absolutely.
And it also, when developers have that, they don't want to change this code because they don't know of the risks associated with these changes, then that can help feed into your own testing heuristics. You're like, if someone's making changes and they don't understand the full scope of what's going on, that means that has a relative risk to the business. Yes. I might investigate a bit more exploratory testing or ask a couple of business stakeholders what they expect this change would occur. You don't need to know, I think, the difference between some of the different architectures on a really in-depth layer, but being able to understand the architecture when a developer tells you about it can help you target where you think the risks are in the software. One of the benefits of using a microservice architecture is that it can simplify the small individual component. Yes. But that comes at an increased complexity for the wider system. Yeah. So instead of focusing on testing that service really well, you're more likely to find bugs when you're testing the system, trying to integrate it on many different layers, when people are building solutions for things that are slightly outside of their understanding and context. So when someone says, I don't understand or I don't know how that works, you can use that as a hint to potentially do more in-depth exploratory testing based on the architecture or what type of information you're getting from developers. Right. In terms of the business context, I actually think I feel like it's more important to understand as a tester because our role isn't as tangible as development. I think being able to justify the value we're bringing inside of that business context, I think is more likely to keep you within the company. Yes. If you're there just helping developers fix issues in their code, but you still have customers complaining about a poor quality product, you're going to have someone along the line question like, what are you doing? What value are you bringing? Why are we paying you as much as our software developers when it feels like there's still room for improvement? So I feel like if you don't understand the business context in how you're operating, I just feel like as a tester, you're more at risk of not having that job for the long term because someone's going to be like, what are you doing?
That is right. That is right. Well, knowing a little bit about the business, if not everything, helps you bring in more context to the job that you are actually doing. You know exactly what kind of problems your end users might run into, which you are trying to prevent by making use of your testing skills, right? You're testing to make sure that those things that the customer sees are seen by you before they actually see it, and and those problems you would like to avoid, right? So yeah, great response to that question. Now I want to shift the focus into something that you are famous for, and that is your pair testing sessions. How did you come up with this idea?
So for the paired testing, I was actually inspired by Noobcat or Sue Hinton on Twitch.
Mhm.
She did live programming for Internet of Things and embedded devices. And a few years ago, she ran a workshop at a conference on getting started with Arduino. So I attended this workshop, and she was talking about the live pairing she was doing in between. And that inspired the idea. It's like, if people are doing live programming on Twitch, why not do live testing?
That's right.
And I had experimented with the idea for a little bit, started investing in hardware that would make the streaming process a little bit easier. And I feel like I've always enjoyed teaching people. And I do want to create more online courses and generally promote better standards of software testing and quality. And because I enjoy that teaching, it seems like an interesting way of combining those two interests. And I've experimented with doing different things. I've now settled on doing either weekly or every 2 weeks. I try and pair test with someone from all over the world. And usually we pick either some mobile apps or some websites, and we'll just go through our exploratory testing process, see if we discover any bugs, and try and come up with ways to improve the testing process. It is an interesting exercise, and I'm also learning from the experience as well, because I'm pairing with testers from all over the world that I hold in high regard as well. So it's great because I get to feel humbled and talk to the people I look up to too.
Excellent. So let me put you on the spot. Which one, or who is the tester that you have really been floored by when you were pairing with him or her?
I think there's been 2 people so far that I've been really excited to have on the show. There's been James Buck. We paired over Slack notifications testing, and
Mhm.
I've done James Buck's rapid software testing course a few years ago, and it was just a really good hands-on software testing course that I think is really highly regarded. And last weekend I had Marit. I can't pronounce her surname. She's from Finland. I apologize for not being able to pronounce her surname, but she's spoken at a gazillion conferences,
Mhm.
runs lots of workshops, and I hold her in really high regard for in the software testing space. A person who I'd be really excited to have on my show, but I haven't slotted them in just yet, is Pradeep Paradarajan. I'm also terrible with that name, but I've had a chat with Pradeep before, and I read his book on Buddha in testing
Yeah.
and dealing with the
Pradeep
chaos.
Rajan.
Yes, I'm just terrible with names. They're like in one ear, out the other, and my tongue gets all tired.
So the tip is, and especially for people from Australia, because people in Australia tend to speak a little faster, is what I feel. So the simple tip is, with Indian names, always slow down. Slow down as much as you can, and you will get it right. So
Yeah, it's just because the name is not right in front of me, and at the moment I can't recall it from memory, so it's just like I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
any reference point So it's like, I know it's Pradeep.
You know Pradeep, and you know Buddha in testing. That's it. That's all you need to know. So.
Oh yeah, and I know he's the head of Mulia testing.
Yeah.
So I guess that's another reference point. But I think he's a busy bloke running his own company. And so I'm not in a rush to get him on the show just yet, but he is another tester I hold in high regard.
Well, I don't know if you know, but this episode is sponsored by Mulia Testing. And
Oh,
Mulya is so Pradeep is in a lot of ways associated with us. And
hmm,
when we started off with these TesterSpeak series of interviews, and it was after about a couple of months when we started, and we had recorded some about 10 episodes or so already in the first couple of months. And there were testers from different parts of the world. So Mulia testing saw the value in what we were doing because we were getting stories from different testers and different thought processes, different ideas, different things. And so they decided to sponsor the Test Chat YouTube channel, which was a great gesture. And ever since we've only grown, we've had different products come into you know uh, the journey of the Test Chat YouTube channel. Earlier, it was just one series of Tester Speak interviews with recorded interviews of testers, such as the one that we are doing now. Then we moved on to doing some live Ask Me Anything sessions, and where we featured a lot of testers from different parts of the world doing cool things. Hosts of communities. We've had Lalit Bamre, who's the managing editor of Tea Time with Testers. We've had him on that show. We've had Mahesh Chikne, who's founded the Test Tribe community. So community leaders were invited. Then Sanjay Kumar, who has revolutionized the UI testing world with his
hmm. Yeah, I think the interview I did with Sanjay, before I did the live pair testing session, I was doing interviews with people under Sydney testers,
yeah.
and
So
I think that interview with Sanjay is one of the most viewed ones we've done from that time.
yes.
So yeah, he's
So
definitely
all
an
these people,
influencer in the space.
they have appeared on the show, and somebody like Naveen Kunteta, who's Naveen Automation Labs, is one of the most viewed YouTube channels when people talk about automation, and is held in very high regards by James Buck himself. So so that we've had him. Then we've had Michael Bolton on our AMA, James Buck. And the funny thing is, now that I look at the violin kept behind you, in the AMA with Michael Bolton, he had a mandolin kept right next to him. So I don't know if you've seen that episode or not, but you must, because Michael has actually played the mandolin on the show. We so because it was kept right next to him, and it kept distracting me while I was asking him those questions, and the audience was asking him. And so I just said, Michael, why don't you just pick it up and start playing? And he did exactly the same thing. He just picked it up and played a beautiful tune for us. So
I
that
think
was
one of
fun.
my favorite conference talks from Michael Bolton is ended with him doing a 3-minute rap on the state of software testing, and it's you don't often get to see people combine a creative thing such as music
Mhm.
with the art of software testing. It can be very hard to combine those two. I am not going to play my trombone on this channel for you at the moment. I can't play and speak at the same time because it's not quite that instrument.
Okay, no problem. We will arrange a different episode for that one, for you to exclusively display your music, you know, proficiency. Uh, So
I have been able to combine music and software testing at some point as well. There's an open source robot called the Tapster robot, and you can use it for mobile testing. And it is open source, so you can 3D print all the parts, buy a couple of Arduino chips, and I actually have it in a box sitting underneath me somewhere. There we go. My Tapster Arduino robot is packed away at the moment. And so I've got like a couple of talks online where I've got this Tapster robot and it's interacting with a mobile device or with its little stylus, and it's just playing a bit of music on a keyboard app, because it's like, how are you going to demonstrate using robots for automating mobile testing? I'm like, play the piano. And so
awesome.
it's been,
I think that'll be
like the
quite
one
interesting.
time.
I think
Yeah.
that'll be quite interesting. So this gives me an idea of doing another episode with you, so I will of course get in touch with you for that one, where you could do this, and I'm sure that'll get a lot of testers interested in trying to learn that side of the skill. Now, this brings me to one of the most interesting parts of the interview, and that is what I call as rapid fire, which is, so I'll be asking you a few questions, and you have 5 seconds to think about the answer. And wherever there is a multiple choice, you will have to explain why you're choosing whatever you're choosing. So you've spoken in multiple conferences so far. So which one has been your favorite conference so far?
Favorite conference, I think, was the first one I attended was PyCon AU. It was in Hobart, and it just had an awesome sense of community. I was able to give a lightning talk on how we were doing building stuff with robots and using Python to help program like this really old robot. And it was just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the sense of community, and I got to learn stuff that was outside of my comfort zone too.
All right, and so, which is your favorite city outside of Australia?
Oh, my favorite city outside of Australia. I've it would have to probably would be Lund or Budapest. I lived in Sweden for a year as an exchange student, and I lived in Lund, and it was just a tiny little university town, and I really loved it. But I also got to do a bit of backpacking around Europe around that time as well. And I was just pleasantly surprised with Budapest. I mean, I like to try and travel a bit more off the beaten path, and I hadn't heard anything about Budapest. I didn't read anything, and I was just blown with the culture and the stuff I could do there, simply because it wasn't one of those stereotypical European cities. It wasn't Paris, it wasn't Barcelona, it wasn't London. It was just really nice.
Yeah, and talking about European cities, I've been living here for 5 years now, and trying to visit different European cities and trying to learn about them. But then 2020, this pandemic came, and we've been locked inside, and we are just waiting for things to get better so that we start exploring. And I was just curious, which will be my next destination, and Budapest is high up on that list. That might just be the next city to qualify for for being the cities that I visit next. So
if you feel like, if you have an adventuring streak, doing some caving in Budapest was a lot of fun. And when I went caving, I was a lot fatter than what I was now. And so even as a fat, unfit person, I still enjoyed crawling around some dirty holes in Budapest.
That's an interesting tip. And okay, so coming back to the rapid fire, well, I am a foodie, and I just love talk about food. So talking about food, what's your favorite food?
I'm going to say dal. I probably make dal curry once every 2 weeks here. And I really love Indian food. The only thing is the spicy stuff. I enjoy eating it. It doesn't agree with me the next day. So I try to keep the spiciness on the lower level because my system doesn't like it. But my housemate is vegan. So whenever I want to cook up a big lot of food to share with them, I think curry is often the first thing that comes to mind because it's really easy to make a really tasty vegetable curry. And so that's probably one of my favorite comfort foods.
Awesome. The thing with Indian food, what you just told me, I've heard it so many times from a lot of people, and I keep telling people that with spices, there are three things associated with the spice. One is it brings in flavor to your food. The second thing is it brings in texture to your food, and the third thing is it brings in that heat in the food, which we often associated with being spicy or something. And so the quantity of that spice that you're adding to your curry or whatever is something that makes a difference. And and even though we eat a lot of Indian food all the time, you know it's it sometimes doesn't agree with our stomach also the next day because,
Yeah.
because something goes off in adding those spices and the combinations, and the next
Yeah.
day we are like, so
Yeah, there's I had my gallbladder removed about this time last year. And so that means that my digestive system doesn't quite cope as well with fatty and spicy foods. So I've had to kind of watch that since then. But I remember going to Kuala Lumpur for a 4-day conference once when I was going through uni, and I ate curry for breakfast. By the third day, I'm like, I'm not eating curry for breakfast. I'm going back to my my very boring old brand cereal because I need something to help make this a bit better.
Well, those were quite some interesting responses to the rapid fire. So now let's get back to testing. And before I let you go, there are a couple of questions that I specifically wanted to ask you. Is for the modern day testers or people who are interested in getting into the craft of testing, if you were to give three pieces of advice, what would they be?
So 3 pieces of advice for someone who's starting in their career. I think maintain that curiosity would be my first step. I think as testers, if we want to be successful in our careers, I think we just have to be insanely curious about the platforms that we're working on, or the teams we're integrated with, or the business context as well. So having that curiosity and always wanting to learn new things, I think will help anyone along their career. It's also like very easy to get comfortable and compliant with our day-to-day work. So also taking that opportunity to take a step out, refresh the mind, and try and re-engage that curiosity on a regular basis, I think is useful too. A second tip, let's see. Second tip, I think practicing communication. I'm going to go through a couple of C's of testing. So we've got curiosity, we've got communication. It doesn't matter if you can find 100 bugs in software. If you can't communicate those bugs effectively to the business or to the developers, no one's going to care, no one's going to fix them. All of that work goes down the drain. But communication is a skill we don't necessarily study, but we have to practice and develop that over time. And my favorite bug is a bug that never gets written. If I'm testing a mobile app and I'm pairing with a developer, I'll have a look at something. I'm going, oh, that looks a little odd. What do you think? And they're like, yes, that's a bug. And it's often fixed the next day. And we didn't even have to write a formal bug report or anything. Because as soon as you have to write something down and send it off, It takes time for that communication to happen. And I don't know if you've ever written a letter or a tweet or something online and it was completely miscommunicated, misunderstood. Your intentions weren't understood at all. And someone got really angry
Yeah.
because they misunderstood. And it's just a flaw with written communication, is that it's really hard to get tone and to get a whole bunch of this extra part of communication because like even with this face-to-face, you know, body language
Yes.
is also useful and whatnot. But yeah, practicing communication is something we need to put conscious effort into. And then focusing on collaboration as well. We're working in a business context with a team of software developers often. So bringing tools that help us collaborate in those situations, I think is really useful. No one really wants to work with the gung-ho solo tester who just sits in the corner and finds all of these weird, lucrative bugs. I mean, like some people will appreciate that, you know, that cowboy tester who was able to find all of the bugs. But if that cowboy tester is able to help other people around in their team also develop those testing skills, I think they'll be able to influence the culture more in that situation too.
Awesome. So there are, so if I were to summarize this response, there are 3 C's that the newbies in testing need to focus on. That would be curiosity, communication, and collaboration. Right, Sam?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Awesome. And so this was really helpful, because the 3 C's that you spoke about are not only helpful for the young budding testers, but for the ones who have a lot of experience. You know, if they also continue to focus on curiosity, communication, and collaboration, I think it'll take their game several notches up. Now, being from Australia, what is your favorite sport? Because I know that Australia, you know, has the Australians have a great liking for sport, and they're very competitive, and we know that because we watch those cricket matches, and we know how competitive they get.
My favorite sport at the moment is rock climbing. When we're not going through lockdowns, I've been bouldering, which is indoor rock climbing, but you're only climbing up maybe a few meters. It's not like the big belay climbing. And I really enjoyed that because there's a strong overlap between people who work in tech and people who enjoy rock climbing, because you're solving problems, but you're also solving problems with your physical body. And a lot of the developers I've worked with have been drawn to rock climbing because it's kind of like coding in a way. You're solving problems. But yeah, there's a lot of sports.
That you do indoors, I have seen some of them being, you know, not having a harness, but I'm assuming that you have a harness tied to you or something like that.
No, so when you're bouldering, because you're not climbing up real high, you climb without a harness, and because you have lots of soft mats everywhere, and even if you fall from missing a hold, you don't fall too far. You also are meant to practice safe falling techniques. Though I broke my ankle falling off a wall indoor rock climbing because I had a freak of an accident. I couldn't walk for 12 weeks, but basically I was climbing across a corner. I swung out, I missed the hold, and my momentum brought me back in towards the wall. If I had fallen straight down, I would have been fine. I would have just rolled and nothing would have happened. But my foot slipped between the wall and the mat, rolled on my ankle, shattered into 3 tiny pieces and in a section, and I was rushed off to hospital. But I enjoy the sport so much that I am still climbing today. And it has actually been really good for the recovery. Like, I wouldn't have broken my ankle if I hadn't gone climbing, but it was a freak of an accident. It is still a good sport I enjoy.
And I can imagine how that would be de-stressing you from everything else, because the focus for that moment is actually to climb that wall, and you're not thinking about anything else at that moment. So
Yeah, it's really good for that focus, and that problem solving and doing a bit of exercise.
yeah,
That's why I still enjoy it.
it's quite interesting. So Sam, if you were not a tester, what would you be?
If I wasn't a tester, what would I be?
Yeah.
I have so many interests that I would have wanted to pursue. I did engineering at uni because even though I was interested in doing teaching, I perceived teaching as being a dead-end career where you're not really well respected in society and you generally don't get paid all that well. And it's hard work. I'm a huge respect to teachers out there. But I was considering that as a potential path. I probably wouldn't have picked that eventually anyway. If I didn't go to uni, I would have done a trade. I probably would have become an electrician or a carpenter because I like making things and doing stuff with my hands. Again, I think that's why I like the more hardware stuff side over just the software side as well.
Awesome. Well, I have also a very strong liking for testing involving anything to do with hardware, because I have worked in the IoT space for some time, and I just love that integration of software and hardware, and that makes you think uh, twice, if not more, that you have to not only test the software, but you have to also test the integration with the hardware, and probably you might need to test the hardware as well, which is of course a specialist job, and there are people who are specialized in testing hardware. But the moment you talk about these interactions, you have to pay more attention, and that gets interesting.
But yeah, talking about career options outside of testing as well, I'm currently studying a graduate diploma in financial advice because I started nerding out over learning about how finances work. I personally have struggled a lot with my finances because I grew up in a poor family and we didn't learn any of this in school or anything. And so potentially helping people also figure out how to run their own finances and how to increase their own wealth is something I might look into in the future at some point. I don't know what I want to do with the degree just yet, but I'm really enjoying studying something outside of my comfort zone.
Which is very interesting, and it is actually inspiring, because a lot of testers often get caught in a dilemma as to what next for me, or what is it that I really want to be doing, and trying something like this, not necessarily studying managing your finances or something, but trying something different. For example, rock climbing. For example, having a degree in finance, trying something which is completely off your domain, of your area of interest, brings new energy in you, is what I feel. It charges you up, and then when you get back to doing things that you're good at, for example, testing, you feel that strong positivity vibe, which will take you a lot further than uh, anything else. And so I find this whole discussion with you really inspiring already. Thank you for charging my battery. I'm sure when people see this interview, they also get the same kind of a vibe. And that's what we try to do with the TesterSpeak series. Every tester has their own journey, and when they share stuff like you just did, uh, you know, because I get to interview the testers, I'm the first one to learn from every tester. And this is the 59th episode of TesterSpeak. So, a lot that I've learned from every tester that I've spoken to. And of course, like I said, there is a lot that we can still do. I would like to do an AMA with you where you can demonstrate your robot and your other skills and play that wonderful instrument that for us. I'm sure that'll also be fun. So I will get in touch with you for that. But thank you so much for giving time on a Sunday. And I know that you are really busy. I hope to find some time and get into one of those pair testing sessions with you.
I would love to have you on the channel, Prajesh, and I look forward to doing some live exploratory testing with you at some point.
Yes. It's just, I just, amidst all that is going on right now with the community and all that stuff, I just need to.
And I know people are busy, and it's fine. The channel is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And
But
it's whenever people are free.
I am interested, and I got interested. I'll tell you when you started off, and then when Santosh was invited, and Santosh, for being the guy that he is, he's always, full of ideas and full of thoughts and full of energy. And Santosh was talking to me, and he was so excited about doing this pair testing session with you. After every sentence that we spoke, he spoke about the session with you. And I'm like, man, I've got to check this out. And then when I checked out the whole episode, and then I followed that with the following episodes that you had, especially the one that you mentioned with James on the Slack notifications. And then you did one recently with Mahati as well. So I've been watching those episodes, and I'm like, I need to do this with Sam, so yeah. So obviously we'll get in touch and we'll do. And to all the testers who are watching this interview, get in touch with Sam. Try those pair testing sessions. It is a great way to learn and make ourselves better at the craft. And
Yes.
Sam is doing such a fantastic job in hosting that on her Twitch channel. And it is, of course, you can see the recording on her YouTube channel. I'll mention the link to those in the description of this particular video.
And I want to open up. I want to open it up to all levels as well, because I think people who are fresh in their careers can bring a lot of perspective. And I also want to pair with people who don't necessarily have, the reputation in the testing space. Everyone's got a story to tell. So even if you're new in your career and you might be a bit reluctant with public speaking, please still reach out. I'll happily have you on board.
Well, if they think that they don't have a reputation, they are going to have a reputation once they pair with you. So that's how I look at it. Thank you so much, Sam, for your time today. It was fantastic talking to you.
No worries. I hope everyone has stay safe and has a afternoon today.
Thank you, Sam.